He was born in a house where the roof leaked every winter. His father, a quiet school teacher, taught lessons by candlelight. His mother sold handmade bread at the market to buy medicine. Daniel grew up watching the world from behind a cracked window, and he promised himself that one day he would never be poor again. At 16, he worked after school, cleaning offices where men in suits spoke about profits and stocks. He didn't understand their words, but he liked how they sounded: powerful, certain, untouchable. At 20, he walked into a bank with a cheap tie and shaking hands. It was his first job. Every day, he arrived before sunrise and left long after sunset. He never said no. He never took a break. Every coin, every paycheck went into savings. He stopped visiting friends. He stopped calling home. "I'll come back when I'm successful," he told himself. But months turned into years, and success, it kept moving further away. He started writing numbers on his wall. 1 million, his first million. It became his prayer, his God, his reason. The boy who once dreamed of freedom was now a man trapped inside his own dream. Pause. Soft piano music begins. He thought he was chasing wealth, but wealth had been chasing his soul all along. 5 years passed. Daniel was no longer the boy who feared poverty. He wore tailored suits, owned 2 cars, and lived on the top floor of a glass building that touched the sky. He had money, he had status, but he had no one to share it with. His father called sometimes, but Daniel was too busy. His mother wrote letters he never opened. Every day he told himself, "When I'm done, I'll visit them. Just one more deal, one more year." But life doesn't wait. One afternoon, while he was closing another contract, the phone rang. He silenced it. 3 hours later, it rang again. This time, a nurse's voice trembled on the other side. "Mr. Daniels, your mother, she's gone." He froze. The city outside was still loud, but inside him, silence. He looked around, piles of paper, screens, empty coffee cups, and realized he had built a world no one lived in. That night, Daniel opened his drawer. Inside, a letter he had ignored for months. It was from his father. The paper was yellow, folded many times, and it said, "Son, money can build walls or bridges. Choose wisely what you build. And don't let success be the reason you lose yourself." Daniel stared at those words until tears blurred the ink. He tried to call his father. No answer. He stood in front of the mirror. Behind him, the city lights glittered like gold. But all he saw was a stranger. For the first time, Daniel realized his wealth was real, but so was his emptiness. Months passed. Daniel returned to work, but something inside him had already broken. He stopped smiling. He stopped sleeping. The markets began to fall, slowly at first, then all at once. His clients panicked. His company lost millions, and so did he. One morning, he opened his account and saw red everywhere. The man who once had everything was now watching it disappear. He screamed, threw his phone, punched the desk, but no sound could fill the emptiness inside him. That night, it rained harder than ever before. Daniel walked aimlessly through the streets, soaked and shivering. His reflection in every puddle looked like a stranger. He stopped at a small alley. There, under a broken roof, sat a little boy, holding a soggy cardboard box filled with broken toys. The boy looked up, his eyes innocent, calm, unafraid. "Mister, do you think toys can dream too?" Daniel froze. The boy's question echoed inside him, breaking through years of silence. He took out his wallet. his last $100 bill. He hesitated, then knelt down. "Maybe they can," he whispered, "if someone believes in them." He handed the boy the money. The boy smiled, wide, bright, pure. And for the first time in years, Daniel smiled too. That night, as he walked away in the rain, he felt lighter, not because he had less, but because he had finally given something real. That was the moment Daniel's fall became his rise. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. The sound of rain still echoed in his mind, but this time it wasn't noise. It was music. He replayed the moment, the boy's eyes, that smile, that simple question. "Do you think toys can dream too?" For years, he had measured value in numbers, but in that one moment, value became something else, a feeling. Daniel sat beside his window, watching the rain slide down the glass. It looked like the world was crying and healing at the same time. For the first time in a long time, he whispered to himself, "I'm sorry." He wasn't sure who he was apologizing to, his mother, his father, or the child he used to be. Then something strange happened. He closed his eyes and saw her, his mother, smiling in that same kitchen from long ago. The smell of fresh bread, the sound of her laughter. "You finally did it," she said softly. "You finally invested in something that grows forever." Tears rolled down Daniel's face, but they weren't heavy this time. They were light, free. He opened his notebook, the one where he had written 1,000 years ago. He crossed it out, and beneath it he wrote just one word: peace. He smiled, because that night, for the first time in his life, Daniel didn't feel rich or poor. He just felt human. The next morning, Daniel woke up to sunlight. No alarms, no meetings, no noise. For the first time in years, his world was quiet, but not empty. He walked to his window. The sky was clear, washed clean by last night's rain. It felt new. Daniel opened his notebook again. He read the word he had written, peace, and beneath it he added one more: purpose. That day he sold his apartment. He closed his bank accounts, and he used what he had left to open a small place downtown. A sign above the door read, "The Last Investment Foundation." At first, it was nothing more than a dusty room with 2 chairs and a dream. But word spread. People came, single mothers, lost students, men who had given up on life. Daniel listened. He didn't give them money. He gave them time. He gave them belief. Day by day, the walls of that small foundation filled with stories of people finding hope again. Sometimes Daniel would sit near the window and think about his mother. He could almost hear her voice. "You finally learned the language of giving." He smiled, because what once felt like a loss was now his greatest gain. Daniel looked at the sunset outside his foundation's window and whispered, "This is the only investment that never fails." And as the light faded, the words, "The Last Investment," glowed on the glass, not in gold, but in the reflection of every life he had changed. Years passed. The city outside changed. New buildings, new people, new dreams. But inside that little foundation, Daniel's world stayed simple. Quiet mornings, warm smiles, and stories of hope. He had grown older now, his hair gray, his hands slower, but his eyes still bright, like a man who had made peace with time. Every day, he opened the door himself, greeted strangers, and thanked them for believing in the dream. Until one afternoon, the mailman walked in. "Mr. Daniels," he said, "you've got a letter. Looks important." Daniel smiled. It had been years since he'd received one. He wiped his hands and opened it carefully. Inside, a single page and a photograph. He froze. It was the boy. Older now, in a graduation gown, holding a diploma, smiling the same way he did that rainy night. The letter read, "Dear Mr. Daniels, you may not remember me, but I'll never forget you. Years ago, you gave me your last $100, and I thought you just bought me toys. But what you really gave me was belief. You taught me that kindness is the greatest investment. I graduated today, and I've started something new, a small charity to help kids like me. You invested in me when no one else did. Today, I invest in others because of you." Daniel put down the letter, tears falling silently onto the paper. He looked at the photo again and smiled. "He made it," he whispered. "He really made it." The room around him was quiet, but in that moment, Daniel heard every voice he'd ever helped. Every laugh, every thank you, every life he'd touched. He looked toward the sky through the window and whispered one last time, "Mom, Dad, I finally did it." The seasons kept changing, but Daniel's little foundation stood strong, like a tree that had found its roots in kindness. Years passed quietly. The walls inside were now covered with photos, smiling faces, thank you notes, and dreams that had come true. Daniel's hair was white now. His hands shook when he wrote, but every morning he still opened the door himself. One day, he wasn't alone. A young man entered, polite, confident, eyes full of purpose. "Mr. Daniels," he said, "my name is Noah. I'm from the university. I grew up in your foundation. I wanted to thank you in person." Daniel smiled. He saw something familiar in the boy's eyes, hope. Noah looked around at the room full of memories. "When I was a kid, this place gave me food and a reason to dream. Now, I want to help you keep it alive." Daniel placed his trembling hand on Noah's shoulder. "It's already alive," he said softly. "Now it just needs a new heartbeat." He reached into his drawer and took out a small, worn notebook, the same one he had written in all those years ago. "Everything I've learned," Daniel said, "is written in here. It's not about money, it's about meaning." He handed the notebook to Noah. The young man looked at it. The last page read only one word: peace. Noah smiled, eyes glistening. "I'll make sure it keeps growing." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then my work is done." He looked toward the window. The sun was setting, gold and gentle. As Noah left, Daniel sat quietly, watching the light fade across the floor. He whispered, "The best investment is the one that outlives you." The room glowed with the last light of day, and then silence. A soft breeze lifted the notebook's cover, and the word peace shimmered in the sunset. "I'll make sure it keeps growing." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then my work is done." He looked toward the window. The sun was setting, gold and gentle. As Noah left, Daniel sat quietly, watching the light fade across the floor. He whispered, "The best investment is the one that outlives you." The room glowed with the last light of day, and then silence. A soft breeze lifted the notebook's cover, and the word peace shimmered in the sunset.